U.S. Republican candidate Donald Trump has said he may hit his Democratic opponent Hillary Clinton harder in the next presidential debate, following their first encounter on Monday. Mr. Trump said he held back because he didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. In a Fox News interview, he also accused moderator Lester Holt of being tougher on him than on Mrs. Clinton. Overnight polls with small samples were split on who won, but more rigorous surveys are due in the coming days. Research firm Nielsen estimates 81.4 million Americans watched Monday's debate at home. This would topple the previous record of 80.6 million viewers who tuned in for the 1980 presidential debate between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. Asked how he felt about the debate on the television news program Fox and Friends on Tuesday, Mr. Trump said it had gone well, but complained that Mr. Holt had not pressed Mrs. Clinton on her scandals. He didn't ask her about the emails, he didn't ask her about the scandals, he didn't ask her about the Benghazi deal. He didn't ask her about a lot of things he should have asked her about. Why? I don't know, he said. He said he felt tempted to bring up the many affairs that Bill Clinton had, but held back because the Clintons' daughter Chelsea was in the audience. I may hit her harder in certain ways. I really eased up because I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, he added. Asked whether Hillary Clinton had got under his skin, Mr. Trump said at the end maybe, at the very last question. Mrs. Clinton had brought up the case of Alicia Machado, a former Miss Universe, saying Mr. Trump called her Miss Piggy after she gained weight. But Mr. Trump brushed away her accusation, said Ms. Machado had gained a massive amount of weight, making it a problem for the Miss Universe pageants, of which he was the owner. After the debate, Mrs. Clinton posted a campaign video in which Ms. Machado describes how she had been treated by Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump also said his microphone was terrible and crackled, and that his volume was lower than Hillary Clinton's microphone. He blamed this for what some listeners thought were sniffles by Mr. Trump during the debate. A CNN/Org poll taken after the debate found that 62% of voters who had watched the head-to-head thought that Mrs. Clinton came out on top, with just 27% giving it to Mr. Trump. This is based on interviews with 521 registered voters chosen as part of a random national sample. But only 26% identified themselves as Republicans while 41% identified themselves as Democrats. An informal CNBC poll on its website found that 61% of people thought that Mr. Trump won while 39% went for Mrs. Clinton, but as CNBC itself points out, the poll is not scientific. Anyone, including people outside the U.S., appears to be able to vote. A post-debate survey by Public Policy Polling of 1,002 debate watchers found that 51% of national voters thought Mrs. Clinton had won, with 40% choosing Mr. Trump and 9% undecided. The U.S. Media View. New York Times, the editorial board was unimpressed with the debate, saying when just one candidate is serious and the other is a vacuous bully, the term loses all meaning. Opinion writer Nick Kristof said Trump had hurt himself, others said Mrs. Clinton had crushed her opponent. Fox News, pundits said Mr. Trump had struggled, never took control and failed to exploit the issue around Mrs. Clinton's emails. It helps to be prepared, one writer told the Republican candidate. Breitbart, writers at the Hard Right News website said Mr. Trump had bludgeoned Mrs. Clinton on trade and accused Lester Holt of shilling for Mrs. Clinton. Some 75% of readers said Mr. Trump had won. New York Daily News, the tabloid's verdict, a grumpy loser. Trump pesters, interrupts Hillary throughout debate, but Clinton gets the last laugh. The much-vaunted role of fact-checkers in this debate was perhaps not as central as many expected it to be. Mrs. Clinton's denial that she had called the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership the gold standard of trade agreements was called out by fact-checkers, as was Mr. Trump's denial that he had called climate change a hoax invented by the Chinese.